Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Champions of Inspiration. Uh, Man, I don't know where to start with all this. This is a great friend that is the executive producer of a cool movie that we're going to talk about. Former correctional officer. Yeah, hard to believe. Yep. Worked in the jails, did all that stuff, but an expert at corporate dispute and resolution, master's degree in that. Again, been involved in multiple movies, a tremendous speaker, a CSP, so certified speaking professional. Charmaine Hammond, thanks for joining us here on Champions of Inspiration.
Thanks so much, Scott. It's always a pleasure to be with you and in conversation with you.
Really looking forward to this, have been for quite some time.
Me too.
Um, you've accomplished so much across your career, and we certainly want to talk about the movie, but give us a little background of how you got to where you are today.
It's a long, twisty path, just like many people listening. I'm sure you can relate. I started out as a correctional officer. That's what I went to school for. That was my big dream in the 80s, and worked in the system for about 10 years. And when I left, I left to actually follow the man I love across Canada, Christopher. And the community we moved to actually didn't have a jail well, they had one, but it wasn't open for business at that time. And it challenged me to go back to school, and I thought about what is it that I miss about the correctional system. There was lots that I didn't miss, trust me. And it was really the collaborative process and the problem solving. And I went back to school and got trained as a mediator, then went back to school again and got a master's degree, and in the midst of all that opened up my own business, a training, consulting and mediation practice. And then fast forward, turned into a speaking career, opened a couple of other businesses. And today I'm still doing speaking and training for corporations and communities. And then also have passion projects that I work on, like my books and the Back Home Again movie.
Well, and absolutely amazing. You've got Hammond International, where you do your consulting, a lot of that.
Yep.
Raise a Dream. I know you've done some amazing passion projects and raised a lot of money and awareness for a lot of really quality projects.
Mm.
How's that make you feel when you're able to accomplish all those things?
It's I think what it's an incredible feeling. And I think for me, the best part of it all is that everything I do is not solo. Everything I do is in collaboration and in partnership and working with others, which constantly brings in new learning for me, which gives me great joy. Brings in new relationships, which gives me tremendous joy. And it gives me a sense of completion. I've found over the years, one of the things that I value is creating projects that matter and having a sense of completion or passing them off to someone. And the projects I get involved with really fill my soul.
That's awesome. So you are the executive producer of a movie called Back Home Again.
Mhm.
So how did that all come together?
Well, like many things, that too is an interesting story. I lived in Fort McMurray for about 15 years, and it was my home. It was where I moved to when I followed Chris across the country, and loved that community. And when they had wildfires in 2016, I came back to the community to work with many of the businesses, my former clients, nonprofit associations, and the school divisions to help them on their recovery and resilience initiatives. And this was, the most costly disaster in Canada. It was a forest fire that evacuated the entire community, more than 80,000 people, for a very extended period of time, more than 6 weeks. And many were away much longer. And it was there when I was doing some work with the school divisions that people were saying, "Have you met Michael Mankowski?" And I hadn't met him yet. And I met him for coffee, and he shared with me his vision for this film. He's a screenwriter, director, producer. And as soon as I heard about the project, Scott, I knew I had to be involved. It was sort of like all these boxes were being checked. It checked the box of community and togetherness and collaboration. It checked the box of being part of something that matters and can make a difference. It checked the big box of this was my home for many years, and I wanted to support this community that had supported me so much while I was there. And then the checklist just continued. So we started working together. That was really my first time diving deep into this industry. It's been an incredible learning, and we had our world premiere in October at a film festival, Edmonton International Film Festival, and won 2 amazing awards. And now we're doing the film festival circuit and the events and screenings, and it's just incredible.
That's awesome. So it is an animated film, but the voices of the animals are all extremely well known.
Yes. Yes.
How did you
And
accomplish that?
well, I'm going to pass on the credit for that one to Michael Mankowski, the screenwriter, director, and John Schneider, one of the other producers on the project. John has worked for many, many years in the entertainment industry and has developed some incredible relationships with celebrities, actors, and agents. And Michael had brought on a couple of the voices that he had worked with in the past, like Tom Green, an amazing Canadian comedian. And together, John and Michael started looking at who were the icons, the role models that Michael had in his entire life. And I remember watching Michael recently speak about Michael J. Fox, who was one of the voices. Michael J. Fox voices a character named Mr. Bird in the movie. He's a raven, which is that's a bird that's very prominent in the Fort McMurray with Buffalo region. And Michael had this big dream about Michael J. Fox. He idolized him. And, John is sort of, I don't know, but let's ask and see what happens. And on went this journey of John tapping into some of the relationships. And it was just, all these yeses, Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy and Martin Short and Kim Basinger, Ed Asner, and the list went on. The part that is so profound and so touching, Scott, is that all of them donated their time and voice to this project. 19 of them. It's just incredible.
Well, that's the thing that I was going to say, because I know that, as an executive producer, one of the roles, obviously, to raise funds to support the production of the movie and the marketing and things like that. But you do have 19 very well-known, wonderful people who donated their time, their effort, their voice to this project as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there had to be some feeling from them of them checking a box or two with this project, correct?
I would definitely say so. And I think one of the common grounds on that, Scott, was that many of the cast were directly impacted or impacted through kind of a 1-degree connection. For example, Kim Basinger lost her home in the California wildfires, and Martin Short and many others had friends and colleagues that were affected by the fires that happened either in Canada or in California. We have animators on the project from around the world who live in countries where forest fires happen a lot. And I think one of the threads that wove all of this together was the fact that the movie was created to be a conversation starter about hope, community, and resilience. It was really to unite people and create conversations that are important, because even if we've never faced a wildfire, we've all faced a crisis with the pandemic. All of us have been affected in some way, our mental health or our resilience challenged. And I think that was one of the threads that wove it all together for this incredible cast.
I think that that's a big part of the reason for this show, and actually the enhancement in intentionality that I made at the beginning of the year is to tell the untold or undertold story, to really share the things that people probably don't know, that they don't even know, right? And so how can we get some information out to people for consideration? Not to persuade or but to at least inform. And that's really a big part of what the movie's designed to do, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And And we know that the more people in all different walks of society and all different roles talking about a certain topic, for example, in this case, hope, community, and mental health, that conversation starts to have these ripple effects. And when Michael and I, in the very early days of the project, I remember a conversation with Michael, and we were talking about, if we had this movie that could be shown in workplaces, it's 30-minute film, so very doable to show as a lunch and learn at a team event or a corporate, lunchtime. What do the people in the room do is that they probably go home and talk to their family over dinner or on the drive to their children's soccer practice. They talk about this movie. Therein starts the conversation. And then likewise, if it's a school that's watching the film, what typically happens? Children go home and they talk about what they did in school that day with their parents and family, and therein starts the conversation. And we did a number of other things, Scott, really unique to this project that we're very proud of. One of them was that the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo region is just an incredible region in northern Alberta, and it encompasses many neighboring communities and many Indigenous communities. And we worked really hard to find partners to come on board to help us translate the film into Cree and Dene, which are two of the predominant Indigenous languages. And now we have more Indigenous languages from across Canada that we're working on. So we've tried to set this film up to be accessible. And the other piece is that one of the comments we hear all the time from people that watch the movie is the diversity of the animals. I mean, there's even an elephant living in the you can't have a movie about a fire without an elephant, right?
Yeah, that's was actually top of mind. I was going to ask that question. I wanted to make sure that you had the elephant in there.
Exactly. And we've had this diversity of animals and diversity of voices and diversity of people and ages in the film. And we get that comment all the time from people. And that's really, Michael worked really hard at that because that's reflective of the Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo region. It is sort of like a melting pot of people that come from around the world to work there. And I remember living there. It was one of the richest qualities for me was just the multiculturalism that happened. And so there was great care that went into all aspects of the film. And the other piece that I think is important to note is that in the early days and right through the project, we worked really closely with educators and mental health professionals, consulting with firefighters and emergency responders and organizations like the Canadian Red Cross, just to make sure that not only the script is capturing the story, but also creating the conversations around mental health, but also that the animation is being done and the character development is being done. For example, how do you show empathy on a fox or a bear? What does that look like?
Yeah, really.
It was an interesting challenge for Michael.
That was another question. How are you getting these feelings through? And I mean, it's a unique, wonderful approach to start those conversations. And I think that's the one thing that we don't have enough of these days.
Yeah.
Again, a big foundation for this show and my personal declaration: share messages of hope and inspiration, teach and train others to do the same, build a worldwide global community full of people with respect, honor, and dignity for all.
Love
So
that.
I love the diversity piece in the film. And the one thing that I could see the conversation about tragedy and loss and some of those things, but the one thing that strikes me is mental health. How's that tie into all this? Because it's kind of it's one of those untold or undertold stories these days.
Yeah. And for so long, mental health has had such a stigma. And people were nervous or uncomfortable to talk about mental health, to share their issues, or even to check in on people that they care about. And in the movie, mental health is kind of woven through as this theme. And you see some of the characters, the animals in the forest, that are responding in different ways to the situation that is happening in their community. And that's very typical of coping with grief and loss and change and crisis, that we can experience the same or similar crisis, but how we deal with it can be very, very different. So that's represented. One of the themes that people comment on all the time is that they loved the source of connection that they saw, where people were just coming to help one another, and the sense of community, which is so important for mental health. In fact, there was a great research study, I believe by the University of Alberta, and they interviewed people after disaster and asked, what was the number one thing that helped you be resilient? And the word was connection. And the film portrays connection right up to the end. People always say, what's your favorite part? And it's like, I end up having 50 favorite parts. The whole movie's my favorite part, but one that just, I can watch, I've probably seen it thousands of times already, but it just pulls at my heart, is the very end of the movie. The community comes together in a celebration, and there's an originally written song, beautiful song called Back Home Again, written by two multiple Grammy Award winners, Walter and Charlie, and it's sung by Jeremy Renner. And it's a song about coming together, about connection, about the power of healing. The lyrics are beautiful. And then the film kind of goes from animation and cuts into real life, and people can then see the community and how it's grown and recovered and connections in real life. And it's just so beautifully done.
Well, again, I think that that's a huge part of my mandate, or I believe why I'm on this planet to begin with, is to be that connector
Yeah.
of thoughts, conversations, people. I like to, I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. I said, I just played traffic cop. I've been the hub to people's spokes for years.
Yeah.
And done so purposely. So I love the fact that the movie ties those things in, and some of those issues, like, again, mental health. I think, we've got to address the challenges, that not only the forest fire in the movie created, but I mean, we've all now lived through unprecedented times with the pandemic and what's going on. And everything has changed a little bit, at least, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what's the reaction to the audiences when they see this movie, and what's their takeaway, their feeling?
Just consistently positive feedback. And some of the very common feedback we receive from children right up to seniors and everyone in between is the message of it being okay to talk about things. In fact, Michael always says, and our partners at Red Cross and Canadian Mental Health always say, it's okay to not be okay all the time. And that's an important message. I think a lot of times society puts so much pressure on us to, just always be our best and to be strong. And, some days we wake up and we just don't feel that way. And making it okay to ask for help is critical. And that was a theme that, people caught out of the movie. What was really interesting for me, the very first time that we had the movie at the world premiere in Edmonton, there was a family with 3 children, and one of them, I think, was about 9 years old, and she was waiting in line to talk to Michael, and I chatted with her in the meantime, and I said, what was your biggest takeaway about the movie? And nothing is said, that this is a mental health conversation starter. That wasn't in part of the introduction. The movie just played. And she said, you know what? She goes, even though the movie's about a forest fire and a community, she said, I think this is actually about a community coming together, helping one another, being there, having each other's backs. And I think it's about mental health. And I thought, wow, can we just use that for the marketing? I mean, just this 9-year-old just summed up in that sentence exactly, what we hoped people would walk away from. And the other interesting comment that we get from a lot of people who were familiar with the fires but didn't live in the community at the time will say things like, wow, that was so helpful to understand that disaster, like some of the details that I didn't quite hear about or know about, because there is some of the there's information in the movie about the size of the fire. And for example, it was so big that it could be seen from space. and how many hectares in size this fire was. And I think that was really appreciated by people as well who may not have been familiar with the fire, but it kind of provided context.
Well, again, I think it's interesting to utilize a different type of tool to get the information across, right? In a way that you may or may not have thought that it would have come to you. But it's interesting, the story about the little 9-year-old girl and really nailing it. If I think personally, one of our biggest issues of the day is how far people have grown apart.
Yeah.
And when you're exact polar opposites, you got to have yin and yang. Well, if you're exact polar opposites, that's a long way apart.
Yeah.
And so if we can pull some people together and connect them better and get, I mean, we're always going to have differences and differences of opinion and all sorts of different things. But if we can use a variety of different mediums to pull people together in a little more connectivity, I also think it will be amazing what we'll be able to accomplish together.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Scott, when I was preparing for today, I was thinking about the very first time I met you, and it was watching you on a stage, sharing a message. And I remember two things that I took away that day, and it was about relationships and how stories connect people. And that was sort of so when I think about Scott, I think about relationships and stories connect people. And fast forward many years ago to a few years ago, I saw you speaking again at an event in Vancouver. And this message, different way that you shared it, but it was that same thread. And that's been something that was really important to us in everything we do around Back Home Again is a thread that I think is one that you share. Stories connect people. And just like you've always said, relationships are so important. I mean, you're a master connector. You've connected me to incredible people. And when you talk about this disconnection that we have as a result of COVID and everything that's going on in the world, it's even more than COVID. I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of us reconnecting with people, reconnecting with things in our life that give us joy, that fill our cup, that feed our soul. It is so important right now because we're at this time where we can't continue kind of doing everything on our own. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to reconnect. In fact, I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I've actually enjoyed the peace and quiet." And for me, it's like I look forward to opportunities to get engaged in rich conversation like today. And it's around finding that way to connect with people.
Well, it's interesting. As the pandemic was going, I had a vision, and I don't necessarily have a lot of those, but it was the Lone Ranger riding 100 miles an hour, and his hat was perfect, his mask was perfect, uniform, the silver shining off the leather on the horse, everything was perfect. But you could hear this whole like cavalry chasing him through the woods. You could hear the hooves. And all of a sudden, they broke from the woods, all dressed as the Lone Ranger. And they were yelling, "We're not chasing you. We want to work with you. Let's collaborate."
Wow.
And I really think that's where we are in society today.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're at that point where we need to. I mean, as you're talking about the film, obviously produced in Canada and very near and dear to Canadians' hearts. I was thinking I want to talk to you about either having a link on my site to it or some way that we can direct people to it, because I think that the fire is kind of the mechanism to get the conversation. And I would love to figure out how we can help get more conversations going, because what you're doing is so important.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I've got to say, I had this rush of goosebumps going over my body when you were describing that vision. And in fact, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've kind of, I think we can relate to that. The way that you described that, it was sort of like, wow, I think you're speaking right directly to so many of us. And I think your message of collaboration, and this is not a new message for you, Scott. I know you've been talking about this since as long as I've known you, but you're so right. Now more than ever, I think we have to work together. We've got to partner. We've got to collaborate. We've got to support one another and be champions for each other's messages. And I think those are critical steps to helping the world heal, because that is kind of what we're doing right now, is we're all trying to get through this together and individually and heal from everything that's happened around the world in the last few years.
Yeah, very much so. In the United States, the entrepreneur is the lifeblood of our economy, and I've got to believe it's the same in Canada.
You betcha.
And, but the characteristic of that entrepreneur is also kind of being that lone ranger. And so when I saw that, and I've shared that a number of times, but I really do think it's highly talented, highly purposed people, entrepreneurs that need to come together to collaborate, not compete, because there's plenty of opportunity, there's plenty of abundance for all. That's why I love the fact that you had 19 voice artists come together and donate their talents, to support the mission. I think those are the things that need to be communicated. I'd love to help more with the movie from that side, because I just love the purpose. I love the idea. How do we make this all happen so more people see back home again?
Yes. Well, we would love to collaborate with you, Scott, because that's all about, all about our mission and connecting people to resources. So many people, that was another learning that we had, is that often people don't know how and where to connect with resources when they need help. And that's another place where collaboration and storytelling is so important. In fact, I witnessed a storytelling between a couple of people a few weeks ago, and they were talking that one of them needed to get some mental health supports for one of their family members, and they'd never had to do that before. They didn't know where to look. And so the one individual talked to somebody at work, and the person said, I don't know, but I would probably just talk to my family doctor. And that's where the process became. But again, it was the, one person having the courage to share with another what they were experiencing, the other person receiving that passion, and then that person got.
I think that's such a we're in such a great area like that. It's interesting because as I do these shows, I get to ask people, what challenges are you having, or different things? How can we be of service in that and help those things? And I think the one thing that is extremely consistent, and whether it's in the United States or Canada or anywhere else around the world, people are holding more things than they're willing to admit consistently. It's like, and everybody got hit with it all at the same time. And so again, I think hearing how Back Home Again addresses that, I think is so positive and so important. I mean, I really think that, and I know you've got great visions of how broad and wide the effects, the ripples will be from Back Home Again, but it would be so cool to make it even bigger and broader than you ever imagined.
I love that. That's what I love about you, Scott. You take an idea and then you just expand it. I mean, I've seen you do that so many times with your projects and people that you've supported through your work. So I love that.
Well, I mean, it seems, again, we haven't talked for some time, and although I've known about the project, again, things don't stay top of mind.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody is, the duck on top of the water. We're all strutting around like everything is fine, and our little feet are paddling as fast as they can.
So
consistent.
true.
So
trying to keep up. Yes.
Exactly. Man, hard to believe we've gone through our time. How can people get a hold of you to learn more?
Well, a great place to start is my website, raiseadream.com. And the movie website is Back Home Again Movie. So you can find Back Home Again Movie on all the social media channels, and then backhomeagainmovie.com, and reach out to me directly. And I'm on social media, either on Charmaine Hammond or Raise a Dream.
Charmaine, thanks for joining us here on Champions of Inspiration.
Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. We'll have to do this again. We just
Yes.
too quick. And all of you, thank you for joining us on Champions of Inspiration. We'll see you again tomorrow. God bless.